The Dingers podcast is on the air. This is episode 95, and I'm your host, Mitch. Kevin, the Cubs are kicking some Toronto Blue Jays butt tonight, aren't they?
Yeah, it's really nice to see them play the Red Jays, and they're beating them really well, even with the Maple Leafs on.
Yeah.
I just hope that at the end they're probably gonna be sorry about that. We didn't bring our good game today.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yeah. The all red threw me. Like I was like, and it threw my kids like, I'm like, who they playing tonight? I'm like the Blue Jays, and they're like, why are they wearing all red? I don't know. Yeah. I was like, maybe it's some Canadian holiday or something, but we looked that up and no, nothing that week.
Didn't see that. And it's a situation where I wasn't watching the game at the beginning to see, did they talk about that? Like, oh, they're wearing these jerseys for this reason. Who knows?
So are your kids all into football, getting ready to play some football? I know around here, all the kids have started football practices. Your kids started football practice?
Yeah, Keaton, my middle son, is super excited about football. I think it's probably his favorite sport, though that tends to just change. When it gets to baseball season, he loves baseball. When it gets to soccer season, he loves soccer. But this is the first year he's getting to play tackle football. And they had to do so many practices without pads and then so many practices with helmets only. And then they finally, last week, he got to get full pads. And they had first full pad practice they couldn't hit. And then the second one they could. And it's a situation they actually ask the parents not to watch practice because they don't want the kids looking over for approval from the parents. They want them to focus on the coaches. So I just drive up at 7. I pick them up and they usually go a little late. So I don't even bother getting there till 7. And I was sitting on the hood of the car waiting for him. And he's walking towards me with this big grin on his face. But he looks exhausted, which, I mean, that's just normal. That's how football practice goes. And he said, "Hey, Keaton, what's up?" And he goes, "We got to hit today. I got to tackle people. It was awesome." Which, if anybody knows Keaton, that's totally his personality. He's wanted to hit people for years. He'd play soccer and somebody would slide tackle him a little bit, or maybe elbow or push a little bit. And he'd always be really fast with, "I'm going to come at you. It's going to be a clean slide tackle when I come at you, but you're hitting the ground."
So football's like, let's go. Now
Yep.
Light him up.
So he's been ready to go. Doing well. School year started well. Heard your school year's going well. Though you said something, you got some a farm story, living back home.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've lived in Ames, a decent sized town, for the last 14 years. And now I've moved out to 700, 800 acre farm. And with that
about
comes
the same. There's no difference there.
It's about the same.
About the same thing.
With that comes different experiences. Like I grew up on a farm, but moving back here, right away, we're dealing with woodchucks, digging huge holes in our garages. And so we've had this one just tearing up our sheds and just digging huge mounds and huge holes and kind of getting into things. And so I was like, all right, I'm gonna take this thing out. I'm gonna get the gun and get ready to shoot this thing. Well, my brother took our good 22 gun. And so we have this old school 22 that sometimes when you cock it and pull the trigger, it'll shoot, but that's at 20% of the time, maybe more 15% of the time. The other time it just clicks and then
that's
you have to recock it.
That's not a great thing for a gun,
No, no, it's not.
I mean, it's a 22, and as long as you don't Luke Skywalker stare into the barrel of it,
Yeah.
But
wow. But yesterday, I saw the woodchuck, and this thing is big. It's a big boy. It's huge. And so I get the gun, go out there, and I have it lined up dead, 15 yards ready to go. And of course, pull the trigger and click and do this about 10 times, and it doesn't move at all. And then it kind of starts taking off. And so I'm still trying to get it, and it gets closer to the hole. And finally I shoot it. I think I hit it, but it still goes down into the hole right behind the garage.
Oh no.
What I forgot to tell you was about 2 weeks ago, our first thing before going to shoot it, we were like, okay, well, maybe we'll try to trap it. But trapping a woodchuck is kind of hard. 'Cause we have to kind of bait it, and depending on the woodchuck and what fruit you have. Anyway, we tried to bait it, and it wasn't working. Well, when the woodchuck ran into the hole under the garage, I was like, okay, I'll go around the other side and open up the garage and see if he's in there. Well, I open up the garage door and look in, and the trap had went off. But it wasn't a woodchuck that was in the trap.
Oh no.
It was a skunk.
Oh,
And I'm like, oh no. Oh no. I was like, okay, like, can I shoot this thing without it spraying? And like, I'm doing the research and like, well, you can sometimes if you hit it right in the head, but
Yeah.
our gun is kind of faulty. Like, I don't
Right.
like, it's like, I don't want to take chances here. But the other thing that they said that you could do is you get a tarp and you hold it in front of you and you walk towards the cage and you drape the tarp over the cage, because they won't spray unless they will only spray at
Oh,
things they see.
right.
And I'm thinking, no way in hell am I doing
Right.
this. Like, no, this is not an option. Not an option at all. But I was like, the more I was thinking, I was like, I got nothing else I can do here. Like, there's there's nothing else I can do. So I go get a tarp. I go get a garbage sack and like cut holes in it and head and put it on. I was like, my wife's like, was like, you should wear a helmet, like Cannon's dirt biking helmet. I was like, the whole front's open. That is not really protecting me. So I left my face open, but I got a tarp. Started walking towards the cage and get about like 4 feet away from it, and the skunk starts like kind of doing circles in the cage at me. And so like back up really quick, like wanting to get out of there, because like my heart's just pumping the whole time while I'm getting close to the skunk. Anyways, I like make a second go at it, get the tarp over the cage, but then I'm like, all right, well, I'm not gonna pick this cage up and like carry the skunk out. I'm gonna try to open the cage, but I couldn't remember how the little latch opened. And so I like, had to walk up close and like feel around. Well, I found the latch, I opened it, but it wouldn't stay open. And when I let it go, it just like clanged really loud. I was like, oh no, it's gonna startle it and it's gonna spray.
Yep.
It didn't. But then I found a rock and finally like got it open, put the rock on it, and just let it walk out on its own. Now we don't know for sure. It might like went and got its family and like come back and made it its home. I don't know, but we checked it. We did check it today, and there was no skunk in our garage. But yeah,
talk about a problem. You tried to fix a woodchuck problem. You ended up with a skunk problem.
Yep. And I still don't know if I got the woodchuck.
Right.
So
that immediately went down the totem pole of things you've got to worry about when you run in there and there's a skunk. It's like, oh no,
yep,
there's
triage this.
I don't want to smell like skunk for a week.
Oh yeah. I was like, oh man, lady ain't letting me get close to her if I smell like skunk. Like,
do you remember when Jeff got sprayed? His like car got sprayed, and
yeah,
he
his car
smelled
got
like
sprayed
a
as he was
skunk.
coming to CrossFit,
And he smelled like a skunk for a couple days.
Like, Jeff, you stink. He's like, do you get? He's like, well, I got sprayed by a skunk this morning while coming in to work to CrossFit. Yeah. Well, I'm drinking a toppling Goliath tonight. What are you drinking?
I'm drinking a Pseudo Sue. I went out and got my favorite classic Pseudo Sue. But you're not only drinking a toppling Goliath, you're drinking what is that, Dragon Fandango?
A Dragon Fandango.
Nice.
I am.
Hey,
they're so good. So good.
Well, you know, we want to know about, toppling Goliath, and we want to know about how you Fandango. Dragon Fandango mixed with King Sue creates a delicious combination of sweet and hoppy, making it the perfect brew to enjoy on a warm summer Friday like, well, today's not Friday, but, warm summer Friday like today, we'll say.
Like Labor Day weekend coming up.
Exactly. Thanks to Tony King for submitting this recipe and letting us know how he Fandangos. Let us and Toppling Goliath know how you drink Dragon Fandango along with the other Fandango series brews by submitting a recipe to www.tgbrews.com/how-do-you Fandango. How do you Fandango? Dashes between the words in there. Check that out. I'm sure they get some interesting stories on that when you just throw out a thing where people get to respond. Should add
Yeah.
a few in there.
Yeah, I mean, I might have to try that King Su and Dragon Fandango because I really like Dragon Fandango.
Right. Yeah,
So,
and I really like King Su, so I bet that would be pretty good. Be pretty
yep.
good.
All right, well, let's weekend recap it. The Brewers
Mhm.
took 2 out of 3. What happened game 1?
Game 1, Steele pitched really well. Looked good again. Was striking out, lost strikeouts. Though he did end up leaving with some back tightness, but nothing serious. And in fact, they interviewed him. Oh man, I watched the interview today. I can't remember if
I think
it
it was on
was
Saturday.
was it the Saturday game interview. One awesome interview. I mean, it's like 10 plus minutes long because
Yeah, definitely go check it out. I think it's
yeah.
on marqueesportsnetwork.com. Like you can go
Right.
there and or the Watch Marquee app and listen to the whole thing because it's great.
Yeah, and one of the things he brings up, or they asked him, was what happens if you lose a fantasy football league with him? What does the loser have to do? And he could not disclose it on air because of reasons.
Yeah,
But also in that game, we happened to win because we'll call that the Hap game with the double dinger in the 10th inning.
he provided basically all the offense,
Right. It was
runs,
nice.
all the hits.
It was
He
nice.
did it all. And Manny Rodriguez was back.
Bingo. Yeah, that was nice to see. I was pretty excited. It wasn't necessarily a clean inning of work, but it was nice to see him come back.
Yep. Oh, game 2.
No, Smiley pitched well. And that was kind of it. Kind of there was a lot of strikeouts. Unfortunately, all the Cubs did that part.
Yes.
But Smiley pitched really well. What about game 3?
Another really, I mean, it was bad pitching performance all around. You had Sampson, who didn't last long. Then Newcomb comes in, rough out of Newcomb.
Right.
And then Wick still continued kind of like struggling the last couple weeks, find command and giving up a lot of hits, just a lot of like contact. And so, yeah, just a bad showing from our pitching staff, but there was a lot of fight. We came back a couple times, tried to make it close, but another L there. So 2 of 3, lost 2 of 3 to the Brewers. But let's look ahead. We have a 3-game set. Of course, tonight's game currently right now with Toronto. Cubs are up 4-3, so they were up 4-0, but Toronto's kind of come back here. Toronto's got a really good offense. So see if they can hold on here tonight. Right. And then they have 2 more up in Canada before heading to St. Louis for a 3-game set. So a lot to look forward to. It's only going to get harder with Toronto. You have to face Gaussman tomorrow with Stroman going, and then they have to face White with Farrell going for the Cubs. And then when we head back to St. Louis, we have Steele going, then Smiley, and then Adrian Sampson for those 3.
Yeah, unfortunately, we see Montgomery, Wainwright, and Michelaus. I don't know. I don't pay attention when he's on the mound to hear what they actually say. Michaelis. That's right. I'll forget it again because Redbirds.
Yep. But we kind of heard some things over the weekend a little bit about some extensions, which I know all Cubs fans would want to hear a couple of years ago. That didn't happen. But Jed was out there talking a little bit about extension, and particularly Nico Horner. So this is kind of something he said when asked if the front office is weighing any multi-year deals from the players that they currently have on the team. Said certainly when you think about where we're spending money or building a team, we absolutely have people in-house who want to extend beyond where their arbitration years are. And I think that's without question. And then asked specifically about Nico Horner, which that's who we're going to be talking about. And he said that's without question that they are going to pursue that. So what are your thoughts initially of Jed kind of being open and honest and kind of saying that, like, yeah, Nico is one of the guys that when we say those things, that's who we're talking about. What are your initial thoughts?
Well, like you brought up, the first thing that caught me was they don't usually talk this openly about something like an extension or anything, and the audience, the Twitter followers, everybody's been crowding around. We need an extension, extend Willie, extend all these players, and now the front office is like, yeah, so we're gonna think about an extension here. It's not been on our minds for a couple years, so we're gonna give this one a thought. Kind of seems like one, it's good timing because Nico's playing. I mean, he's balling out right now. It'd be fantastic to lock him down. And he's so versatile. I know I saw there was some thoughts I saw on Twitter like, oh, you don't have to go sign one of those big shortstops if you lock down Nico. We've talked before on here, like that doesn't necessarily mean you don't go after one of them. Nico can play wherever. So you lock him down for a lot of years, get his value controlled, pay the man. He's going to get his money. But it'd be great to know he's a solid piece you're going to have for a lot of years to come as the younger guys are progressing up through. And I have some ideas a little later on. We talk about a couple other rumors about what a potential timeline or a view of the team in a year or two could look like. But I was excited to hear this because it's been so long since we've talked extension. The only one that like hits in my head was the Kyle Hendricks one from a couple of years ago.
Yep.
Seems to be like the last extension that I really heard about, other than everybody, all of us going like extend Baez, extend Rizzo, extend Bryant, extend somebody, extend Wilson. I think it's Dom every time Willie does anything good in a game. It's extend the captain, extend the catcher.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty clear that extension talks are going to happen this offseason. I think they're looking to make moves and looking to spend. I think this is kind of the first part of where we're actually going to spend. I think last year they spent wisely. They didn't overspend. They let the market kind of push their decisions, and they got Marcus Stroman. And you never know, like he might kind of do what all the Braves players do and sign a hometown deal,
right?
Or team friendly deal because he wants to stay here. And he's kind of made this place his home, which he's said he's loved Chicago. So you never know that like that 3-year deal might turn into more later on. But I think this offseason they spent wisely. They tried to get some players that they could flip like Miley and Smiley. It didn't turn out, but they still got bullpen arms that they did that too with Robertson. And so I think they've spent wisely. But I think this next year is where they're really going to try to like push the ball forward because they have so many guys in the minor leagues that are going to be up in 2 years. And so they're trying to picture that, but they want to have some guys that have been around to be the leaders. And when you look at Nico Horner, and when I've heard the front office talk about him and heard other players talk about him and just the way he carries himself on and off the field, when I listened to Ian Happ talk about him on his podcast, the Compound Podcast, like there's something about the thing that Nico has of being a leader. And I think that's something that the Cubs want. Like he's a good player to have out in the field because he is kind of the captain out there and knowing what to do. His baseball IQ is through the roof. You've seen how his defense has improved this year, and like he's kind of shut some mouths on can he be the starting shortstop? Of course, yes. Now he can. Like we know that for sure, and I've been saying it for now 2 years. Like he's the man. My question is, what type of deal can he get, and what type of deal will the Cubs offer that could be kind of comparable? When I look at like, I kind of threw out the Dansby Swanson. Like Dansby Swanson's contract is going to be up, and when I look at them comparably, Nico isn't Dansby Swanson. Dansby Swanson is having a career year this year on his contract year. He's going to make bank. When you put them side by side in just their stats, Dansby Swanson is beating him in doubles, singles, hits, runs, at bats, home runs, RBI, stolen bases, walks. He's beating Nico in all those, but not by like a ton. Like the one that you want to land on is doubles. Dansby Swanson has 28, Nico has 18. When you look at like home runs, Dansby Swanson has 17, Nico has 8. RBIs, that's the one that's kind of separating, is 76 to 44. But a lot of times Nico's batted either down in the order or he's batted up in the 2 hole, so he hasn't been set up to be able to do that. Where Swanson in that Braves lineup, like that lineup is helping those numbers a little bit because I mean that Braves lineup is just stacked. Like he has opportunity because there's guys on base all the time in scoring position. So it's a little bit different. Now, when you look at just their defense, like Dansby Swanson is a good shortstop, but so is Nico. Nico's one of the best shortstops in the league right now, I would say. But when you think about like what type of contract Dansby is going to be getting, I'm guessing he's going to get somewhere between the 6-year, $80 to $100 million deal, probably more closer to the $100 million
right, with his year he's
deal
having.
with the year he's having. Now, I don't think Nico is going to be looking for that, but if you could get a 5-6 year deal for, let's say, 55, 60,
Right.
65, like
Mhm.
I think that's a deal that you make. I mean, Ketel Marte for the Diamondbacks signed a 5-year, $70 million deal with an extension. Like he's comparable offensively. Defensively, he's not even close to being as good of as a defensive shortstop as Nico. Now I know Marte plays a little bit of second base, but nowhere near as good of defender as Nico. So that'll be interesting to see this offseason of what type of deal they reach. If they could get it cheaper and they could get like a 40, like a 5 for 40 or 5 for 45 or something like
Right.
that, like that's, and then where there's built-ins if he like makes all-star team or if he does certain things or if they make the playoffs or like those things, that's an added benefit where I like those type of deals.
Yep, I totally agree. I really like that idea of, kind of building the floor, hoping for something like 40, 45, but then like the ceiling, 75, maybe 80. I don't know that I necessarily see that unless it's going to come with I don't know, a longer more years or something like that, but um I love the idea of locking him down and getting him paid and avoiding arbitration and those discussions, which I've heard from some of the players, those arbitration meetings get kind of weird when the team's basically like, no, you're terrible, blah blah blah, but we love you, we want you to continue playing for us, but you're not worth this, it just seems like such an odd process. But
The funny thing is like when you look at OBP and you look at like WAR,
yeah,
they're really close in
Mhm.
both of those. And so like OBP, like Nico is 341 and Dansby Swanson is 325. So Nico's beating him there.
Mhm.
So like it's interesting. I mean, it's a comparable, but like obviously Swanson's gonna get way more on his contract.
Mhm.
So like it only helps the Cubs that the league just doesn't value Nico as much as they value Dansby Swanson because Nico doesn't have the name and he doesn't get the recognition. And so that's only going to help the Cubs where I think they could get a deal. And why not sign this guy so he's there? Because he
Right.
can move over to second if they do get a shortstop like Xander Bogaerts or whatever, or they could keep him at shortstop and see if that guy will move over to third.
Mhm.
And then I mean, there's so many things that they can do with that.
I mean, we have a lot of outfielders coming up, but he played some outfield last year a little bit too. I mean, not where I think his hands are too fast for outfield per se, but just having that versatility in a guy on the bench, and he's going to be that leader position when all these young guys keep coming up in the next push. It'd be great to lock him down and him be a homegrown leader within the organization. I mean, it's not necessarily bad to turn around and go pick up somebody like we've done in the past, but if you've got him there and he's willing to take a decent deal and the Cubs have the money to spend and they can build around that, knowing you lock him down for a bunch of years to come, I think that's fantastic.
Now, something I read on Twitter, and this is a tweet from another Cubs podcast. Won't say what podcast tweeted out, but this was our tweet, and I thought it was a good topic for us to discuss because I disagree with the tweet. Questioning Ross's handling of the pitching staff and bullpen. So this was a tweet. It said, being a former catcher, you would think Ross would handle pitchers well, but for 3 straight seasons, he does not at all.
I don't know. Hot takes like this are always interesting because they only come out, you only get the negative reaction when something doesn't work out, but you don't get all those positive times when Ross pulled a guy at the right time or he went to the right pitcher and that pitcher clicked. And you don't see the like, man, that was a great pitching change by Ross right there, Instead it's like, oh, that pitcher did well, type of thing. You don't credit the manager, but when the pitcher comes out and does poorly, oh, that's on the manager. They did a horrible job. And it doesn't help that you had well, it was like 2 or 3 weeks ago, Rowan Wick was on such a tear, and he was like almost closing all the Cubs games for a while. And now he's been on such a cold stretch. But
Yep.
at the same time, just like all the managers around the league, you don't leave that guy in the cold stretch in the bullpen. You don't leave him just sitting back there, never pitching again. You got to keep him coming out. Unfortunately, it means a lot of rough innings potentially, especially with the bullpen that we have right now. I mean, if they're trying to kind of evaluate, is Rowan Wick a guy they're going to keep a 40-man spot for over the next offseason? But I don't know that you can blame Ross for bringing out that particular pitcher at that time. I don't know. I trust Tommy Hotovy enough to know, like, it's not Ross making singular decisions there. There's a whole pitching staff that's turning around and saying this is the best guy to put in these situations, and it doesn't work out sometimes.
Hold on, to say that about the last 3 seasons.
Right.
Are you serious? Like, he's had to deal with them trading away his entire bullpen in the middle of the season twice now. What do you and this year he's had to deal with so many injuries from the rotation.
Mm-hmm.
In like, what, I don't get it. And this was coming yesterday. It was the tweet after he pulled Adrian Sampson to bring in Newcomb, which, like, yeah, it's probably not the right move, but in this season, it is the right move. Like,
Right.
Obviously they wanted to see something out of Newcomb. They want to see what they have in him, because you know what? At the end of the year, need to figure out, are they going to extend him another contract, or are they going to cut him loose? So why not see him perform in a little bit high leverage situations? We've seen him do fairly well out of the bullpen in certain situations, but why not see it? Like, and I feel like Adrian Sampson, he hasn't pitched a ton in years prior. He's getting a ton of starts, and those innings are racking up. They're trying to limit his innings. Same that they're trying to do with Keegan Thompson and Justin Steele. They're going to try to now limit those innings. So they're not going to pitch them into the 7th just because they might have a 2-run lead. Like, right. So it's like almost ridiculous. Like, to say these things that, like, so critical of somebody when you're not, like, I will never do that, like, because I'm not in the meetings to figure out their game plan. I'm not in there to say, hey, this guy has a little bit of a shoulder issue that we're going to try to make sure that we're not going to try to overuse, or like a pitch count where Steele, and especially Steele and Thompson, they've never pitched this many innings in their career,
and we're not out of August yet.
Yeah. And so, like, to say these things so flippantly and, like, so critically, like, it just, like, it got me. I was a little bit heated. I didn't write anything back because, like, we're not that type of Twitter account. Like, I'm not going to get argument, but I was like, come on, like, do better. Like, it shows an unintelligent response, or like an emotional response, without understanding the game of baseball, and especially understanding where the Cubs are. Have you not watched a game this year? Like, understand the last 3 years, what Ross has had to go through and where they're at right now. Because, like, right now they're not there. Like, they need to, like, figure out who some of these players are and maybe put them in high leverage situations, or, like, maybe they need to protect them a little bit because they're not ready yet. Right. And they don't want them to, like, emotionally cave, because we're not there. We're not riding in the bus with them and in the plane to know where they're at, where their head's at. Like, so it's just,
I want to see their tweet right now that just says that Ross made a great pitching change move because Brandon Hughes just threw one pitch and finished an inning.
But they're probably critical because he brought in Manrod, and he's just off the injured list and gave up some runs,
right?
Or gave up the time
run. Yep.
So it's like, come on, like we have Manrod back. They're trying to figure out who he is.
Yep. To be honest with you, the pitching moves over the next month are going to look really weird, I think, because you've got all these players that are getting towards their innings limits and stuff like that. And are you going to move Steele and Thompson back to the bullpen to limit their innings, or are you going to pitch them out another start or two and then they're going to just kind of disappear? Or
we're going to jump to this too, because so Jeremiah Estrada and Brandon Little are getting called up this week. So both of them pitching in Iowa have been pitching really, really well. You are going to see them pitch in the Cubs bullpen a lot to end the season. And the reason why I say that is because both pitchers are Rule 5 eligible this year.
Yep. That's
so,
what we were saying, I'm just going to butt in real quick. We were saying, Jake wanted to see Matt Mervis, but he's not on the 40-man and he wasn't Rule 5 eligible. And it's like, we would love to see him up there. We're not going to see any position players. I doubt it. We're going to get Rivas, maybe Schwindel back up if somebody goes down positionally, but we're going to see all these Rule 5 eligible relief pitchers that are going to start popping up. Caleb Killian might end up with another start here eventually.
He got absolutely
he did get
up.
shelled, but he did, unfortunately. But some of those guys who are Rule 5 eligible, they're going to spend the 40-man spot now because they have to decide, are they going to be willing to spend that 40-man spot later over the offseason?
And you have to think, like, what they do right now to end the season, it's the same as last year. What they're doing to end the season is going to build the bullpen for next year. Mm-hmm. You're going to find out who these guys are, who you can trust, and maybe even figure out how you can tweak them in the offseason, get them in the pitch lab to figure out how you can improve them. Like, you're going to see, in Estrada, like, he has posted a 1.30 ERA.
He's gone from high A to triple A this year. Is that what I was reading today? Holy smokes.
In 48 innings spread across 3 levels. His strikeout rate, get this, is 40.4%. And his walk rate is 10.4%.
Could you imagine that? Almost half the guys he faces strike out.
Yep.
Like, that's
picture
the
that, like,
dream.
you're the batter coming up, like,
yeah,
there's a good 50% chance that I'm K'ing here.
Right.
Not like contact. Nope. Not K'ing. Yep. Brandon Little, if you remember him, he's a giant on the mound with a big arm. Has looked great at times in the minors. Sometimes he's kind of lost his command. But as of July and August, he's posted a 1.06 ERA with a 23% K rate and a 5% walk rate. The thing that's separating him right now is he is producing a ridiculous 62.6 ground ball rate. So he's getting people to roll over the ball and beat it into the ground. Keeping it off the air is huge in today's baseball.
Right, especially in Wrigley. That'd play real well in Wrigley.
And I don't know if you saw Brian Smith's tweet from Bleacher Nation. Mm-hmm. When these two make their debut, the Cubs will become the only MLB team to have their first 7 selections in the 2017 draft reach the big leagues.
That's huge. Holy smokes, first 7.
And I think Brandon Hughes was the 17th pick in that draft class. So you even have more. So, like, that draft class was awesome for the Cubs.
Wow. That's huge. Jeepers. Got to imagine as a scout, you got the guy who hits 10 home runs or 15 home runs. They're like, yeah, we made it, then they break out the next year like that. Those scouts have to be turning around going like, man, we rocked it back in 2017. The hard part about scouting is we're in 2022 and you're figured out that you rocked it in 2017. Yep. Like, that's got to be such an interesting job, but that's awesome. Both for the Cubs as an organization and all those players that are going to get their opportunity in the big leagues. It's fun stuff.
The last big thing in Cubs news, did you hear the Cubs are trading for Shohei?
Oh, yeah. I think it's a done deal.
Yep. Off season. Done. Shohei is going to be pitching.
There we go.
For the Cubs in Wrigley.
Did you hear that we'll have to sell the whole farm to get him? The whole thing.
All of them.
Iowa Cubs will no longer exist.
We're not even gonna have a minor league, so when they get their union, the Cubs won't have to worry about that.
Yeah, true. I thought this was interesting. The idea of the Cubs pursuing Shohei Ohtani. I mean, who's gonna say no to Shohei being on your team? Something that I talked about just a smidge earlier when we were talking about Nico. I know a lot of people are worried about you have to trade too many pieces away. I mean, right now it'd only be for one year of Ohtani. Is that right? Like, his contract is up in a year?
Well, I'm pretty sure that they would do a sign and trade, or they would make sure that they would get him for an extension.
Right.
They wouldn't make that deal without that. I think the Cubs front office is at a point where it's like, that's the only way they would do this deal.
Right. There's no reason why we would need one year of Ohtani. But there's, I don't know, for me, I was thinking about it today. There's some interesting combinations between, if you get Ohtani, if you extend Nico, and then this kind of was one, depending on who you trade, if you trade some of those outfield pieces that we've got coming up in the system, do you extend Hap?
Or is he part of the deal that goes to
Right.
the Angels?
Yeah, I was trying to
Knowing that you have
all those
Owen,
pieces coming up.
yeah, you have
Brendan Davis coming up before
PLC
too long.
or
PCA.
PCA,
Yep.
Owen Casey, like you have all these guys, and the minors are doing well. Like Hap might be extended. Or
see, instead of that, I want to go volume. You can have Ortega, Hermosillo,
Wisdom. I
Wisdom.
know Jake would throw Wisdom in that deal
Yeah,
in a heartbeat.
There you go. Yeah.
That one's for Ian.
That's what I don't know. I was just thinking in my head earlier, like if we could keep Hap and get Shohei and extend Nico, you've built a very interesting lineup just in those three, and then you go get
You have what
Xander
the people
Bogaerts.
like to call the core.
Yeah. What? And then you get Brennan Davis and PCA, and yeah. The only thing that I thought of in that whole thing was like we kind of have a few right now. If the people we have now were still on the team, we have quite a few like DHs. So like we've got Franmil Reyes, you've got Jackson Frazier's down at Iowa. There's a couple other folks kind of come out up in the system that are bat heavy. It's like, oh, maybe those, that might have to clear out some space, or maybe they get traded. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it will take probably one or two of our top 20 plus some already guys in our major league, which I was thinking maybe Ian Happ might be in that. Wisdom. I mean, I think Wisdom would actually be a good trade piece in that. Like,
oh yeah,
has a high upside, could hit some dingers for the Angels. I mean, the Angels are so just in a bad spot. Like their organization, the owners want to sell. It's just mismanaged and misran. And the sucky thing is they have the two best players in all of baseball playing for them.
And they should be the face of the whole
they have
thing.
Other really good players. I don't get, and they went out and got pitching this year. This isn't an Angels podcast, but I don't know what happened. Like,
right.
Joe Madden, I thought would have done better at the beginning, and then he got canned. And then, I mean, I think it was when he walked the run in.
And I just love seeing Mike Trout, his reaction in the outfield when he's like,
"Wait, what?" Yeah, like I think that just like totally flipped their whole season and just like ended them. But yeah, I mean, Shohei in the Cubs lineup and pinstripes hitting dingers for the Cubs. I would love to see that. I think it was Joe Kilgallen tweeted out like, for you Cubs fans like are saying no to this, why would you not want the best player on your team?
Right.
And I just tweeted at him, I was like, yeah, because I'm sure the Yankees, I said if I was the Yankees, I would have turned down the Red Sox in a heartbeat. Like I would never have taken Babe Ruth off their hands.
Right.
Like,
right. Exactly.
Like, come on. Like, it worked out for the Yankees back in the day by getting Babe Ruth. Like, why not?
Why not go out and get an ace starter who happens to hit 20 plus bombs? Shucks.
And I know earlier this year, like you could come up to me and say, "Hey, Mitch, well, you didn't want to get Juan Soto." I didn't, because I think with the Juan Soto, I think the Nationals wanted too many prospects. I think with the Angels, you could get them to take some already major league talent, and it actually does what we've been talking about for the last 2 months, is that we need to free up playing time for younger players to actually see who they are. And so it actually does what we want.
Right.
And so I think you'd only have to give up one or two, not like your whole farm, like the Padres did, to be able to get. I mean, I still think the Padres made out really, really well.
Yeah. Yeah. That was an interesting package that went back to the Nationals.
The Nationals only really got one piece that I think is really worth it. But I mean, yeah, Shohei, I would be super happy about having the best player in all baseball playing for the Chicago Cubs.
Yeah, and it's not like you're going out and he's not going out. We're not getting him to play outfield. Like
No.
there's a different need that Shohei fills. Yeah, I'd love to see it. I mean, it was a few years ago, and I know it was before we started the podcast, and Bleacher Nation was all over like, get him, go get Shohei then before he signed with the Angels. It's like, oh, hey, maybe we can get him now.
And I think it would only help Seiya.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
And I guarantee you, you know what you do? You know what you do? You know what you do? You see if Shohei can play first base.
Ooh. Hey, if I learned anything from Moneyball, you just got to be able to catch over there. Yeah.
Well, one, like, then it stays on his arm because he's not gonna have to throw a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's tall, so when he's not pitching, you put him over at first base. You let him and Seiya, like, it could only help Seiya to have another Japanese player that he can connect with.
Well,
Like,
imagine that as Ricketts, you got to imagine that market saturation in Japan. You're going to get all of those folks.
Money raking
Right?
into Chicago from Japan. Like, oh man,
makes too much sense, folks. Makes too much sense. Something's got to go wrong.
The deal's done. The deal's done. It's done.
Without happening.
Yeah. In other news, like we said, MLBPA announced a plan to unionize minor leaguers. What are your thoughts on that?
That's pretty exciting. I don't know. With all the minor league, coming out a couple years ago, they're showing, or you're hearing about minor league players staying, 10 to a room and stuff like that. Kind of the wackiness. I only see it as a potential upside to actually like stabilizing the whole minor league system, making sure the guys actually make a decent enough living, like they can have wives and have kids, be kind of nice to do for those folks. It also, I don't know, I've always thought of the minor leagues as a little bit like the Wild West. Like every team does it a little different. Every level's a little different. You're not really sure what's going on. So I imagine if you get it unionized, it'll be a little more, I don't know, the same throughout.
Yeah. I mean, I like it. I think it will only help. I think we wouldn't have had to get to this point if some major league teams just did a better job of taking care of them. I not saying the Cubs don't, because from all I've heard is the Cubs do a very good job in taking care of their minor leaguers, especially as of late, the last couple of years. But like, it's only going to help the players get things that they deserve, and especially, get the minor leaguers get what they deserve.
Yep. Yeah, I'm excited about that. I think that would go well.
Well, like we said, we have a 3-game set in Canada with the Blue Jays. Right now, currently, Monday night, we're recording. It's 4-4 in the 9th. I mean, as of late, we've been playing good in the extra innings, so maybe we'll get a dub tonight. Yeah.
Be great.
Yep. But that does it for episode 95 of the Dingers podcast. Remember, go follow us on Twitter at Dinger Cubs. Join our conversation. We love interacting with you, Cubs fans and our listeners. So go do that. Go to tgbrews.com/beer finder to find out where you can get some Toppling Goliath in your area. Labor Day is coming up. Good time to drink some beer and hang out with friends. Get their Berry Patch Fandango. I highly recommend that. I've been drinking that. It's super good.
Support the dinosaur.
Yep.
Go get
support the dinosaur. I mean, there's so many like good end of the summer drinks that they have going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
Don't pass up the opportunity to drink some Toppling Goliath and support the dinosaur. But yeah, that does it for episode 95. We're almost to 100. Jeff's going to get his cupcakes.
Yes, he is.
Maybe by the end of the season, because we have like 8 weeks left, I think, in the season.
Right? I was trying to kind of map out. I'm like, I think we're going to get there. It's going to be real close.
Yep. All right. Well, that does it for episode 95 of the Dingers podcast. Thanks for listening.